The alarm system screamed across every military base on Earth. Jake Morrison stood in the command center, his coffee cup frozen halfway to his lips as the main screen lit up with red warning signals. He had been a commander for 15 years, but nothing in his training prepared him for what he was seeing now. "Sir, we have multiple contacts entering the solar system," Lieutenant Danny Price called out from his station. His voice shook slightly. "They just appeared past Jupiter. No warning, no signal, nothing." Jake set down his coffee and walked closer to the screen. The dots representing the alien ships kept multiplying. 10, 20, 50, 100. "They didn't stop coming. How many?" Jake asked, keeping his voice steady even though his heart was racing. "Still counting, sir. We're at 400 now. No, wait. 600. Sir, they're not stopping." Around the command center, men and women rushed to their stations. Phones rang constantly. On the news screens mounted on the walls, Jake could see reporters already talking about the mysterious objects in space. The secret was out. The whole world would know within minutes. Dr. Lauren Hayes burst through the door, her security badge still swinging from her neck. She was the head of Earth's xenolinguistics program, which meant she studied alien languages. Until today, that had been mostly theoretical work. "Tell me this is a drill," she said, coming to stand next to Jake. "I wish it was," he replied. "Look at the formation. They're organized, military. This is an invasion force." The ships moved with purpose, gliding through space in perfect formation. They were beautiful in a terrifying way. Each vessel seemed to be made of crystal or glass, reflecting the light of distant stars. They bent the space around them, making them appear larger than they actually were. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission," Danny said. "It's on every frequency. Radio, television, internet, everything. They've hijacked all our communications." Jake felt his stomach drop. "Put it on screen." The main display flickered and changed. Static filled the screen for a moment, then cleared. What appeared made several people in the command center gasp. The alien queen was huge. Even through the screen, her presence felt overwhelming. She stood at least 10 feet tall, with skin that shimmered like oil on water, changing colors as she moved. She had 4 arms, each one long and graceful. But it was her face that captured everyone's attention. She had multiple eyes, arranged in a pattern across her forehead, and each one seemed to look directly at whoever was watching. "People of Earth," she spoke, and her voice came through in perfect English, though it had a strange musical quality to it. "I am Zathara, Queen of the Dominion Collective. We have traveled across your galaxy for 10,000 of your years. We have visited 847 worlds. We have brought them all into our collective. You will be the 848th. Lauren grabbed Jake's arm. "She's using multiple linguistic patterns at once. She's not just speaking English. She's speaking every language on Earth simultaneously, customized for each viewer." The Queen continued. "We have studied your species for many cycles. You are primitive but interesting. Your technology is weak, but your minds show potential. Therefore, I offer you a choice that I have not offered others." She paused, and in that moment, Jake realized the entire world was holding its breath. "Surrender to me now. Become part of my collective. Join the Dominion and your people will live. You will serve me, but you will live. Refuse, and I will turn your planet into dust. Your oceans will boil. Your cities will burn. Every living thing on your world will cease to exist. You have 72 of your hours to decide." The screen went black. For several seconds, nobody in the command center spoke. Then everyone started talking at once. Phones rang. People shouted questions. The news screens showed chaos in cities around the world. Jake raised his hand for silence. "Everybody focus!" "Danny, get me a line to the president." "Lauren, I need you to analyze every second of that transmission. Find me something we can use." "Use for what?" Lauren asked. "Jake, did you see that fleet? We don't have weapons that can touch them. Our best ships can't even reach half the speed of light. Those things crossed from Jupiter to Earth orbit in minutes." "I know," Jake said quietly, "but I'm not ready to give up yet. There has to be something." Over the next several hours, Jake watched the world react to the ultimatum. Some governments immediately voted to surrender. They argued that survival was better than pride. Other nations wanted to fight even if it meant certain death. Protests erupted in major cities. Some people demanded the government save them. Others said they would rather die free than live as slaves. Jake assembled a team in a secure conference room. Along with Lauren, he brought in Chris Sullivan, the best pilot in Earth Space Force. Chris had flown missions to Mars and back, pushing experimental engines to their limits. He was young, only 28, but fearless. Megan Foster joined them next. She was an engineer who designed most of Earth's defensive satellites. If anyone knew the limitations of their technology, it was her. Finally, Brandon Cole arrived. He was a strategist who had advised on every major military operation in the last decade. He had a reputation for finding solutions when everyone else saw only problems. "Okay, team," Jake said once they were all seated. "Let's be honest about our situation. Can we fight?" Megan shook her head immediately. "Not conventionally. I've been analyzing the scans of their ships. The energy readings are off our charts. One of those vessels has more power than our entire planetary defense grid combined. We have 600 of them sitting in orbit. What about a surprise attack?" Chris suggested. "We load up our fastest ships with nuclear weapons, fly out there, and hit them before they react." "They'd see us coming," Brandon said. "Their sensor technology is obviously far beyond ours. They detected our deep space probes before we even knew they were in the system. No, a direct attack would be suicide and wouldn't accomplish anything." Lauren had been quiet, studying her tablet. Now she looked up. "I found something strange in the transmission. The Queen said she studied us for many cycles. That means she's been watching us for a while. But she also said we're interesting. Not valuable, not useful, interesting. So?" Chris asked. "So why does a queen of a galactic empire find primitive humans interesting? She's conquered 847 worlds. We should be boring to her by now. But there's something about us that caught her attention." Jake leaned forward. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking this isn't just about conquest. She wants something specific from us, something she hasn't found on other worlds." Before anyone could respond, Danny rushed into the room. "Sir, we're receiving another transmission. It's on a private channel. It's addressed to you specifically." Jake felt everyone's eyes on him. "Put it through." His tablet screen lit up. The Queen's face appeared, but this time it was just her, not a broadcast to the whole world. "Commander Jake Morrison," she said, and hearing his name in her strange voice made his skin crawl. "You are in charge of your planet's defense. I wish to speak with you face to face. Come to my flagship alone. I will send a shuttle for you. If you refuse, I will reduce one of your cities to rubble as a demonstration. You have 1 hour to decide." The screen went dark again. "Absolutely not," Megan said immediately. "It's a trap." "Of course it's a trap," Jake replied. "But what choice do I have? She'll destroy a city if I don't go." Brandon stood up. "If you go up there, we might never see you again. She could absorb you into her collective or just kill you." "Maybe," Jake agreed. "But maybe I can learn something." "Lauren, you said she finds us interesting. Maybe if I talk to her, I can figure out why. That information might be the only weapon we have." Lauren looked at him with worried eyes. "Jake, the collective she mentioned. I've been researching what little we know from the transmission. I think it means a hive mind. Everyone who joins loses their individual identity. They become part of her. They stop being themselves. Then I'll have to make sure I stay myself," Jake said with more confidence than he felt. The hour passed too quickly. Jake stood on the landing pad as the alien shuttle descended. It was small, just large enough for one person and made of the same crystal material as the larger ships. When it landed, a door opened silently. Jake looked back at his team one last time. Chris gave him a salute. Megan looked like she wanted to cry. Brandon nodded grimly. Lauren mouthed the words, "Be careful." He stepped into the shuttle. The door closed behind him, and he felt a strange sensation as the craft lifted off. There was no sound, no vibration. It was as if he was standing still while the world fell away beneath him. Through the transparent walls, he watched Earth shrink below him. He saw the blue oceans, the white clouds, the green and brown continents. It looked so peaceful from up here, so fragile. The flagship grew larger ahead of him. It was massive, easily 10 miles long, shaped like a curved blade. The surface rippled with strange lights. As his shuttle approached, an opening appeared in the side of the ship. He flew through it and into a landing bay that seemed to go on forever. When he stepped out of the shuttle, the Queen was waiting for him. In person, she was even more imposing than on the screen. She towered over him, her forearms moving gracefully as she gestured for him to approach. "Commander Morrison," she said, "you came. I was not certain you would." Jake returned to Earth with a weight on his shoulders heavier than anything he had ever carried. The shuttle landed at the same pad he had left from, and his team rushed to meet him. They had questions, dozens of them. But Jake held up his hand. Conference room. Now. Everyone. Once they were secure inside with the doors locked and jamming signals preventing any listening devices from working, Jake told them everything. He described the Queen, the strange conversation, and the impossible demand. She wants a volunteer? Lauren repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. Someone has to give up their freedom, their identity, everything they are. That's what she said, Jake confirmed. One person joins her collective willingly, or she takes the entire planet by force. Chris slammed his fist on the table. This is insane. How can one person make a decision that affects everyone? What gives anyone the right to sacrifice themselves for all of us? Maybe that's exactly what the Queen wants to understand, Lauren said thoughtfully. She said humans understand choice differently. This is the ultimate choice, isn't it? Choosing to give up your freedom so others can keep theirs. Megan was typing rapidly on her laptop. I've been going through old data from our deep space probes. We've had sensors in the outer system for 20 years. I'm checking to see if we caught anything about the Dominion before now. Brandon paced the room, his strategist mind clearly working through scenarios. We need to understand what we're dealing with. Jake, you said the Queen claimed she's absorbed trillions of minds across 847 worlds. That's a lot of civilizations. There must be records, stories, something about the Dominion out there. Already on it, Lauren said, pulling up files on the main screen. I've been digging through everything we've collected from our radio telescopes. We've been listening to space for over a century. If the Dominion has been conquering worlds, someone must have sent out warnings or distress calls. They worked through the night. Jake watched his team with pride as they dug through data, searching for any clue that might help them understand their enemy. Coffee cups piled up. Eyes grew red from staring at screens. But nobody stopped. It was Megan who found the first clue. Got something? She shouted, making everyone jump. One of our probes near the edge of the solar system picked up a strange signal 3 years ago. We thought it was just cosmic noise, but look at this pattern. She played the audio file. It was distorted and broken up, but there were definitely words in it, spoken in a language none of them recognized. Lauren ran it through every translation program they had. It's old, she said. Really old. The language patterns match something from ancient Earth cultures, but evolved differently. Like someone took humans away from Earth thousands of years ago. Can you translate it? Jake asked. Lauren worked for another hour, piecing together fragments. Finally, she had something. Her face was pale as she read it aloud. Beware the light that swallows thought. Beware the Queen who takes but never gives. She came to our world with promises of unity. We thought we could resist. We were wrong. By the time you hear this, we are already gone. We are part of her now. We are no longer ourselves. We are no longer anything. If she comes to your world, do not fight. Do not surrender. Find the third path. Find the way she cannot see. Silence filled the room. Find the third path. What did that mean? There's more here, Megan said, pulling up sensor data. The probe detected massive energy spikes in that region of space around the time the message was sent. Then nothing. Whatever civilization sent this, they disappeared completely. Chris leaned back in his chair. Okay, so we know the Queen is real and she really does absorb entire worlds. That's not exactly helpful information. We already knew she was powerful. But the message says find the third path, Brandon pointed out. Not fighting, not surrendering. Something else. What's the third option? Lauren was staring at her screen, her fingers tapping nervously on the desk. I think I know. Or at least I have a theory. Jake, when you were on the flagship, did the Queen seem curious? Did she ask questions? She did, Jake said, thinking back. She seemed genuinely interested in understanding free will. She said it troubled her that she didn't understand it. Because she's part of a hive mind, Lauren said excitedly. Think about it. If everyone in the Dominion is connected, sharing thoughts and experiences, there's no real individual choice. Everyone thinks the same thoughts. Everyone wants the same things. Free will can't exist in that system. So? Chris asked. So maybe that's her weakness, Lauren continued. She conquers worlds and absorbs them into her collective. But by doing that, she eliminates the very thing she wants to understand. She's trying to study free will by destroying it. That's why she finds humans so interesting. We have something she can never truly possess as long as she remains what she is. Brandon started nodding. The third path. It's not fighting her and it's not surrendering to her. It's changing her. Can that even be done? Megan asked. How do you change a being that's existed for 10,000 years? I don't know, Lauren admitted. But think about what the Queen asked for. She doesn't want a slave taken by force. She wants a volunteer. Someone who chooses to go with her. Maybe that's significant. Maybe the act of choosing, of volunteering, creates a different kind of connection than forced assimilation. Jake felt a spark of hope for the first time since returning from the flagship. You think a volunteer could influence the Queen? Change her from the inside? Maybe, Lauren said. Or maybe not change her, but teach her. If someone went willingly, keeping their sense of self, their ability to choose, they might be able to show her what free will really means. That's a huge risk, Brandon warned. We'd be betting everything on a theory, and whoever volunteers would still lose their freedom. Even if they somehow influence the Queen, they'd never come home. Unless influencing the Queen is the whole point, Chris said slowly. What if we're thinking about this wrong? The Queen said she's absorbed 847 worlds. That's trillions of beings all connected to her. If someone could reach the Queen's consciousness and change how she thinks, wouldn't that affect the entire collective? The implications hung in the air. They were talking about more than just saving Earth. They were talking about potentially freeing every civilization the Dominion had ever conquered. It's still just a theory, Megan cautioned. We have no proof this would work. No, Jake agreed. But it's something. It's more than we had an hour ago. They continued researching, and as the hours passed, more pieces fell into place. They found another old signal. This one from a probe that had been to a different part of the galaxy. It contained fragments of what looked like historical records from another conquered civilization. Lauren translated these as well, working with the limited data they had. The story that emerged was both fascinating and terrifying. Thousands of years ago, there had been another queen of the Dominion. This ancient queen had encountered a species that taught her about individual desire, about wanting things for herself rather than for the collective. The records were unclear about what happened next, but they mentioned something called the corruption and the Great Purging. I think the Dominion had a civil war, Lauren said, piecing together the fragments. This ancient queen started to develop individual consciousness. She started wanting things, choosing things. The collective couldn't handle it. They either destroyed her or she destroyed herself. Either way, the Dominion that emerged afterward was more ruthless, more absolute in its control. So there's precedent, Brandon said. The Queen can be changed. Individual consciousness can emerge in the collective. But it's dangerous. Everything about this situation is dangerous, Jake pointed out. The question is whether we can use that information. They decided they needed more than theories. They needed to test their ideas. Jake requested another meeting with the Queen, claiming he had questions about the volunteer process. To his surprise, she agreed immediately. This time he brought Lauren with him. The Queen allowed it, though she seemed curious about why he would bring a linguist to a military negotiation. On the flagship, the Queen received them in the same vast chamber. Lauren stood beside Jake, her scientific curiosity overcoming her fear. You have questions, the Queen said. It wasn't really a question. We do, Jake confirmed. You said you want someone to belong to you. What exactly does that mean? What happens to them? The Queen tilted her head, a gesture that seemed oddly human. They will join the collective. Their mind will connect to mine and to all others within the Dominion. They will share all thoughts, all experiences. They will become part of something greater than themselves. But will they still be themselves? Lauren asked. Will they still be able to think their own thoughts? The Queen was quiet for a moment. That is what I wish to discover. When I take minds by force, they lose their individual identity quickly. It is absorbed into the whole. But a willing mind, a choosing mind. I do not know what will happen. This is why I am interested. You're experimenting, Lauren realized. You want to see if free will can survive absorption into the collective. Yes, the Queen said simply. I have never encountered a species that values individual choice so highly. I wish to understand it, if you're volunteer. The applications came in like a flood. Within 12 hours of the announcement, over 5 million people had volunteered to sacrifice themselves for humanity. The number kept growing every minute. Jake stood in the command center, watching the counter tick upward on the screen, feeling overwhelmed by the weight of humanity's courage and desperation. We need a system, Brandon said, coming to stand beside him. We can't review 5 million applications in the time we have left. I know, Jake replied. Lauren's team is setting up filters. We need specific qualities. Someone with a strong sense of self. Someone who understands philosophy and can think abstractly. Someone who won't break under pressure. Megan joined them carrying a tablet. I've been running psychological profiles on the applicants. Most of them are parents wanting to save their children. We have thousands of soldiers, hundreds of elderly people who feel they've lived full lives. But Jake, most of them are just scared people trying to do something brave. Which is exactly what makes them human, Lauren said, walking over with her own stack of files. But Megan's right. Being brave isn't enough. Whoever goes up there needs to be able to maintain their identity while connected to a hive mind that's absorbed trillions of beings. That requires more than courage. It requires an unshakable sense of who you are. They worked through the day and into the night, narrowing down the applicants. The filters helped, but there were still thousands of potential candidates. Each file represented a person willing to give up everything. Each one had a story, a reason, a life they were willing to sacrifice. Chris brought coffee to the team around midnight. "This is impossible," he said quietly. "How do we choose? How do we tell someone that they're the one who has to go?" "We're not choosing who has to go," Jake corrected him. "We're choosing who gets the opportunity to save everyone." "It's different, is it?" Chris asked. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks the same." A name kept appearing in Jake's review pile. Amy Rodriguez. He had seen her file 3 times now, flagged by different analysts for different reasons. Finally, he pulled it up to read it completely. Captain Amy Rodriguez, age 34. Marine Corps decorated veteran. She had served in peacekeeping missions on Mars and had led rescue operations during the mining colony disaster 5 years ago. Her psychological profile was unusual. She scored high on independence and self-reliance, but also on empathy and ethical reasoning. What caught Jake's attention was her education. Before joining the military, she had studied philosophy at university. Her thesis had been on existentialism and the nature of choice in extreme circumstances. She had written about how humans define themselves through the decisions they make, especially when facing impossible situations. "Lauren, look at this one," Jake said, forwarding the file. Lauren read through it quickly, then read it again more slowly. "She's interesting. Military background means she can handle stress. Philosophy training means she can think about abstract concepts like free will and identity. But look at her personal history." Jake found the section Lauren meant. 3 years ago, Amy's husband and young daughter had been killed in an accident during a cargo transport malfunction. She had been off-planet at the time, unable to save them or even say goodbye. "She's volunteering because she has nothing left to lose," Megan said, reading over their shoulders. "That could make her stronger or weaker. Grief can do strange things to a person." "Read her application statement," Lauren insisted. Jake found it and read aloud. "I volunteer not because I have nothing to live for, but because I have everything to fight for. I lost my family, but humanity is still my family. I understand loss. I understand sacrifice. But more importantly, I understand that being human means choosing to act even when action seems meaningless. The Queen wants to understand free will. I can show her, not because I'm special, but because I refuse to stop being myself no matter what happens to me." The room went quiet. Those words carried a weight that the other applications lacked. This wasn't someone running from pain or seeking glory. This was someone who understood exactly what was being asked and why it mattered. "I want to interview her," Jake said. "Bring her here." Amy Rodriguez arrived at the command center 6 hours later. She was shorter than Jake expected, maybe 5.5 feet tall with dark hair pulled back in a tight bun. Her posture was military straight, but her eyes held a depth of emotion that suggested she felt things deeply despite her controlled exterior. They met in a small conference room, just Jake, Lauren, Brandon, and Amy. She sat down across from them and waited, her hands folded calmly on the table. "Thank you for coming." "Captain Rodriguez," Jake began. "Amy is fine," she said, "and I should thank you for considering me. I know there are millions of applicants. We've narrowed it down to about 50 candidates," Brandon explained. "We're conducting final interviews with each one. We need to make sure whoever we choose understands what they're facing." "I understand," Amy said simply. "The Queen will try to absorb my consciousness into her collective. I'll be connected to trillions of other minds. Most likely, I'll lose my sense of self and become just another part of her. But there's a chance, a small one, that I can maintain my individuality and influence the collective from within. Lauren leaned forward. You've read the theoretical briefs we sent out. I have. I also did my own research. I've spent the last 2 days reading everything I could find about hive minds, collective consciousness, and psychological resistance techniques. I know the odds aren't good. Then why volunteer? Jake asked. With your skills and experience, you could be valuable here on Earth, helping to coordinate resistance if the worst happens. Amy was quiet for a moment, choosing her words carefully. When I lost my family, I lost my future. The life I had planned, the person I thought I would be, it all disappeared in an instant. For a long time, I was just going through the motions of living. Then this happened, and I realized something. She paused, meeting each of their eyes in turn. I realized that being human isn't about the future we plan. It's about the choices we make in the present. Every decision, every action, that's what defines us. The Queen has spent 10,000 years conquering worlds, but she's never made a real choice. She doesn't know what it means to choose something knowing it will cost you everything. I want to show her. I want her to feel what it's like to want something, to choose something even if it hurts. That's a very philosophical approach, Lauren noted. It's the only approach that makes sense, Amy replied. You can't fight the Queen with weapons. You can't reason with her using logic she already knows. But you can change her by showing her something she's never experienced. Choice. Real, meaningful choice. And the only way to do that is to maintain my own ability to choose while connected to her. Brandon asked the next question. What if you can't? What if you lose yourself like all the others? Then at least I chose to try, Amy said. That choice, that moment of decision, it becomes part of the collective memory. Even if I fail, the idea of free will exist within the Dominion. Ideas are hard to kill even in a hive mind. Maybe especially in a hive mind. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. This woman understood the mission better than they did. She had thought it through, accepted the risks, and found meaning in the sacrifice. She was exactly what they needed. But he had to ask one more question. Are you doing this because you want to die? Because you want to be with your family again? Amy's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. I'd be lying if I said I never thought about that. But no, if I wanted to die, there are easier ways. I'm doing this because it needs to be done, and I believe I can do it. My family wouldn't want me to give up on life. They'd want me to fight for something that matters. This matters. After Amy left, the team discussed her at length. They interviewed 12 more candidates that day, each one impressive in their own way. There was a professor of cognitive science who had theories about resisting mental assimilation. There was a monk who had practiced meditation for 40 years and claimed he could maintain his sense of self under any circumstances. There was even a former astronaut who had survived alone on a damaged space station for 6 months and knew what it meant to hold on to humanity in isolation. But they kept coming back to Amy. There was something about her that felt right. She wasn't the smartest candidate or the most experienced, but she understood the mission on a level that went beyond intelligence or training. She understood it in her soul. I think it should be her, Lauren said finally. She has the psychological strength, the philosophical understanding, and the personal motivation. More than that, she has something the Queen will recognize. She has loss. She has grief. Those are emotions the Queen can't understand, and that might be what keeps Amy's identity separate even after connection. Brandon nodded slowly. I agree. The other candidates are excellent, but Amy is the right choice. She won't break under pressure, and she understands what she's fighting for. Megan sighed. I hate that we're doing this. Sending someone up there, knowing they'll probably never come back, never be themselves again. It feels wrong. It is wrong, Jake said. But it's also necessary. Amy knows that. She's choosing this with open eyes. The shuttle carried Amy through the darkness of space in perfect silence. Through the transparent walls, she watched Earth grow smaller behind her, a blue marble floating in an endless void. She tried to memorize every detail, the swirls of white clouds, the brown and green continents, the deep blue of the oceans. She didn't know if she would ever remember seeing it after what was about to happen. The flagship grew larger ahead of her, impossibly vast and beautiful in a terrifying way. Its crystalline surface reflected starlight in patterns that seemed almost alive. As her shuttle approached, an opening appeared in the ship's side, like a mouth opening to swallow her whole. She felt the shuttle dock with barely a tremor. The door opened and Amy stepped out into the landing bay. The Queen was there, waiting, just as she had been for Jake. But this time, dozens of other beings stood behind her. Amy realized these must be members of the collective. Some looked vaguely humanoid. Others were completely alien, with too many limbs or no limbs at all, bodies that defied normal biology. "Captain Amy Rodriguez," the Queen said. Her voice echoed strangely in the vast chamber. "You came willingly. This pleases me." "I chose to come," Amy corrected gently. "There's a difference between willing and pleased. Choice isn't about feeling good. It's about deciding what matters most." The Queen tilted her head, studying Amy with her multiple eyes. "Already you teach me, come. We will begin." Amy followed the Queen through corridors that seemed to shift and change as they walked. The walls glowed with soft light that pulsed in rhythms Amy couldn't quite identify. Other beings moved past them, all silent, all moving with the same strange synchronized grace. They entered a large chamber at the heart of the ship. In the center was a raised platform surrounded by strange equipment that hummed with energy. The Queen gestured for Amy to step onto the platform. "The process will be painful at first," the Queen explained. "Your mind will resist joining with the collective. This is natural. The pain will fade as you accept the connection." "And if I don't accept it?" Amy asked, climbing onto the platform. "Then the pain will continue until your consciousness can no longer maintain its separation. Either way, you will join us. But I hope you will choose to accept. Fighting will only make you suffer longer." Amy lay down on the platform. Above her, mechanical arms began to move, positioning themselves around her head. She felt her heart racing but forced herself to breathe slowly, calmly. This was what she came here for. This was her choice. "I'm ready," she said. The Queen raised one of her forearms and the equipment activated. Amy felt something touch her temples, cold and sharp. Then the pain hit. It was like nothing she had ever experienced. It wasn't physical pain, though her body screamed in response. It was deeper than that. It was the sensation of her mind being pulled apart, stretched, invaded by something vast and alien. Voices filled her head, millions of them, billions, all talking at once, all thinking different thoughts that somehow blended into one massive consciousness. She wanted to scream but couldn't find her voice. The boundaries of herself were dissolving. She could feel other minds pressing against hers, trying to absorb her into the collective whole. Images flashed through her awareness. Memories that weren't hers. Experiences from 1,000 different species across 1,000 different worlds. For a moment, Amy felt herself slipping away. It would be so easy to just let go, to surrender to the collective and end the pain. She could feel the peace that would come with it, the simplicity of being part of something greater, of never having to choose or decide anything again. But then she remembered. She remembered her daughter's laugh. She remembered her husband's smile. She remembered Jake's face when he told her she had been chosen. She remembered why she was here. Amy pushed back against the collective consciousness. She gathered everything that made her herself, every memory, every experience, every choice she had ever made. And she held on. The pain intensified, but she didn't let go. She couldn't let go. That was the point. That was what it meant to be human. She felt the implant activate in her brainstem, releasing its first wave of data. Images of human history flowed through her mind and into the collective. The Queen gasped, actually gasped, as the information hit her consciousness. "What is this?" The Queen's voice echoed in Amy's mind, no longer coming from outside but from within. "What are you showing me?" Amy couldn't speak with her mouth anymore, but she could think, and her thoughts carried through the connection. "This is us. This is humanity. This is what you wanted to understand." The collective was experiencing human memories now, filtered through Amy's consciousness. They felt the joy of a child learning to walk, the grief of a soldier watching his friends die, the wonder of an artist seeing a sunset, the determination of a scientist solving an impossible problem, the love between parents and children, between friends, between strangers who helped each other without expecting anything in return. But most importantly, they felt choice. They felt what it was like to stand at a crossroads and pick a direction, knowing that picking one meant giving up another. They felt the weight of decision, the freedom and terror of being able to shape your own destiny. The Queen's consciousness recoiled, confused and fascinated in equal measure. "This is chaos," she thought. "How do you function like this? How do you exist when every moment requires decision? When every action is a choice that could be wrong? That's what makes it beautiful. Amy thought back. She was still herself, still separate, though the boundaries were fuzzy now. She existed both as an individual and as part of the collective, a paradox that shouldn't work but somehow did. We function because we choose to. We exist because we decide to keep existing even when it's hard. Time became strange. Amy didn't know if minutes or hours were passing. She floated in the collective consciousness, maintaining her own identity through sheer will while sharing everything she was with billions of other minds. The implant continued its work, slowly releasing more information about humanity, about Earth, about everything that made humans unique. And something unexpected began to happen. The collective started to change. At first, it was small things. A being somewhere in the vast network had a thought that was their own. Not shared, not synchronized with everyone else. It startled them, and the thought was quickly absorbed back into the whole. But it had existed, however, briefly. Then another individual thought emerged, and another. Like ripples spreading across a pond, Amy's influence was propagating through the collective. The concept of individual consciousness, of having desires and wants that were yours alone, was spreading like a virus, or like an idea, as Lauren had said. Ideas were powerful things. The Queen felt it happening and was torn between fascination and fear. "What have you done?" she demanded in Amy's mind. "The collective is fragmenting. Individuals are emerging. This is not what I wanted, isn't it?" Amy challenged. She was growing stronger now, more confident in her ability to maintain her identity. "You said you wanted to understand free will and choice. You can't understand those things without experiencing individual consciousness. You can't study choice from within a hive mind that never chooses anything." "But the Dominion needs the collective," the Queen protested. "Without it, we are weak. Without it, we are nothing." "Without it, you are individuals," Amy corrected. "You're not nothing. You're people, trillions of people who have been forced to think the same thoughts for thousands of years. Don't you want to know what you would think if you could think for yourself?" The question hit the Queen like a physical blow. For the first time in her 10,000 years of existence, Zathara experienced genuine uncertainty. She had always known what she wanted because the collective wanted it. She had always known what to do because the collective did it. But now, with Amy's consciousness intertwined with hers, she was experiencing something new. Doubt. And with doubt came possibility. Amy felt the Queen's internal struggle. She pushed harder, sharing more memories, more experiences. She showed the Queen her daughter's birth, the overwhelming love and terror of becoming a parent. She showed her husband's proposal, the moment of choosing to bind her life to another person's. She showed the grief of losing them, the pain that came from loving something so much that losing it could break you. "This is suffering," the Queen thought. "Why would anyone choose to feel this?" "Because the joy is worth the pain," Amy answered. "Because loving someone, really loving them, means accepting that you might lose them. That's the price of caring about things. That's what choice costs. But it's worth it. Every time it's worth it." Days passed, or maybe weeks. Time had no meaning in the collective. But Amy noticed changes accelerating throughout the network. More and more individuals were having their own thoughts, experiencing their own desires. The hive mind that had been absolute and unified for millennia was fracturing into billions of separate consciousnesses. Some of them were confused. Others were angry. Many were frightened. They had never experienced the loneliness of individual existence, the burden of making decisions for themselves. Some tried to retreat back into the collective unity, but it was too late. The idea was out. You couldn't unthink a thought once you had it. The Queen was experiencing the worst of it, as the central consciousness. On Earth, Jake Morrison stood in the command center, staring at the screens that showed the alien fleet in orbit. 3 days had passed since Amy left. 3 days of silence. 3 days of waiting to see if Earth would survive or burn. Then, without warning, every communication channel opened at once. The Queen appeared on the main screen, but this time something was different. She seemed smaller somehow, less imposing. And standing next to her, looking tired but alive, was Amy Rodriguez. "People of Earth," the Queen began, and her voice was different too. It was softer, more uncertain. "I am Zathara. 3 days ago, one of your people came to me willingly. She taught me something that I have never understood in 10,000 years of existence. She taught me what it means to choose." Jake felt his heart racing. Around him, the command center had gone completely silent. Everyone was watching, waiting. Because of what I have learned, the Queen continued, I have made a decision. Not because the collective demands it, but because I choose it. I am releasing all beings within the Dominion from forced connection. The age of the collective is ending. A new age begins today. Amy stepped forward. She looked exhausted, but her eyes were bright with emotion. Earth is safe, she said. The fleet will withdraw. The Queen has agreed to share technology and knowledge with humanity, not as conqueror to conquered, but as equals seeking to understand each other. The command center erupted in cheers. People hugged each other, cried, laughed. Jake felt tears running down his own face. They had won. Against all odds, they had actually won. But as he watched Amy on the screen, he realized something. She wasn't coming home. He could see it in her face, in the way she stood next to the Queen. Something had changed in her, something fundamental. However, Amy continued, and the room quieted again. I have made a choice of my own. I'm staying with the Queen, not as a prisoner or a slave, but as an advisor and friend. The Dominion is transforming into something new, and they need help understanding how to be individuals while maintaining cooperation. I've chosen to be part of that process. Lauren grabbed Jake's arm. She's staying? After everything? It's her choice, Jake said quietly. That's what this was always about. Choice. The transmission ended and the fleet began to move. Not attacking, but withdrawing. The massive crystalline ships turned gracefully and began their journey away from Earth's solar system. It was the most beautiful thing Jake had ever seen. Over the following weeks, more information came through from Amy. She sent regular updates about what was happening in the former Dominion. The transformation was chaotic but incredible. Species that had been absorbed centuries ago were rediscovering their own cultures. Beings who had never experienced individual thought were learning what it meant to have preferences, opinions, desires. The Queen herself was struggling with the transition. She had existed as a collective consciousness for so long that being an individual was completely foreign to her. Amy described it as teaching someone to walk who had only known how to fly. Every decision the Queen made, even simple ones, required effort and concentration, but she was learning. And more than that, she was curious. The Queen, who had conquered 847 worlds, was now fascinated by the simple act of choosing what to eat for breakfast or what color to wear. Everything was new to her, and she approached it all with the wonder of a child discovering the world for the first time. 6 months after Amy left Earth, the first diplomatic mission was arranged. The Queen invited representatives from Earth to visit the flagship, which was no longer called a flagship at all. It had become something like a mobile embassy, a meeting place for the hundreds of species that were learning to cooperate as individuals, rather than as a hive mind. Jake led the delegation. With him were Lauren, Brandon, Megan, and Chris. They boarded a shuttle, far more advanced than the ones that had taken Amy, and made the journey to what the former Dominion now called the Concordance, a voluntary alliance of independent species working together for mutual benefit. The flagship was transformed. Where before it had been cold and synchronized, now it buzzed with activity and personality. Different species moved through the corridors, talking, arguing, laughing. It reminded Jake of a university campus during the first week of classes, everyone excited and nervous and trying to figure out where they belonged. Amy met them in the landing bay. She looked different. She had put on weight, looked healthier. Her hair was longer, and she wore clothes that were a blend of human and alien styles. But most importantly, she looked happy. Welcome, she said, embracing each of them in turn. I'm so glad you're here. You look good, Lauren said. Really good. We were worried about you. I won't lie, the first few weeks were rough, Amy admitted. But I'm finding my place here. There's so much work to do. So many species trying to figure out how to be independent after thousands of years. They need teachers, guides, people who understand what individual freedom means. It's challenging, but it's meaningful. She led them through the corridors, pointing out different species, explaining the various cultures that were being reborn. They saw beings that looked like walking trees discussing philosophy with creatures that seemed to be made of pure energy. They saw what Amy called a decision workshop, where former collective members practiced making simple choices in a safe environment. Finally, they reached the Queen's chambers. Zathara was there, but she wasn't alone. Several other beings sat with her in what looked like a casual meeting. They were discussing whether to help a newly independent species establish trade routes. The Queen was asking questions, seeking opinions, considering different viewpoints. It was so different from the absolute monarch who had threatened to destroy Earth that Jake almost couldn't believe it was the same being. "Ah, the Earth delegation," the Queen said, rising to greet them. Her movements were less graceful now, more uncertain but somehow more genuine. "Thank you for coming. Your Captain Rodriguez speaks highly of you all." They spent hours talking, discussing plans for cooperation between Earth and the Concordance. The Queen offered technology that could revolutionize human society. Faster than light travel, clean energy sources, medical advances that could eliminate most diseases. In return, she asked for teachers, philosophers, artists. She wanted humans to help other species learn about individuality and choice. "We are all children now," the Queen explained. "Children learning to walk. Your species understands freedom in a way we are only beginning to grasp. We need that knowledge more than we need anything else." As the meetings continued, Jake found a moment alone with Amy. They stood on an observation deck, looking out at the stars. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked. "Staying here instead of coming home?" Amy was quiet for a moment. "Sometimes I miss Earth. I miss coffee shops and rain and the sound of birds in the morning. But no, I don't regret it. This is where I'm supposed to be. This is my purpose." "Your family would be proud," Jake said. Amy smiled sadly. "I think so. My daughter always wanted to meet aliens. She'd probably love it here. And my husband, he always said I was meant for something important. I just never imagined it would be this." "You saved billions of lives," Jake reminded her. "Trillions, actually, when you count all the species the Dominion had conquered. You're a hero." "I'm just someone who made a choice," Amy replied. "That's all any of us are, really. We're the sum of our choices, the decisions we make when things are hard. I chose to come here. I chose to stay. And I'd choose it again." The Earth delegation stayed for a week, establishing the frameworks for ongoing cooperation. They met with representatives from dozens of species, each one with their own story of awakening, their own journey from collective to individual. It was inspiring and overwhelming in equal measure. On their last day, the Queen held a formal ceremony. It was the first time the Concordance had gathered together for something other than discussion. They came from all over the former Dominion territory, thousands of beings from hundreds of worlds, all there to mark the beginning of their new era. The Queen stood before them, and for a moment Jake saw a flash of her old power, her old certainty. But when she spoke, her voice was humble. "We are here because one human showed us what we had lost," she said. "We had conquered worlds, absorbed civilizations, spread across the galaxy. But we had never truly lived. We had never chosen. We had never been ourselves. Today we begin the journey of discovering who we are as individuals. It will be difficult. Many of us will make mistakes. Some of us will fail, but we will do it as free beings, not as slaves to an ancient pattern." She turned to Amy. "Captain Amy Rodriguez, you came to us as a sacrifice. You stayed as a teacher. Now I ask you to remain as a partner. Help us build this new civilization. Help us learn what it means to be free." Amy stepped forward. "I accept, but not as your servant or your subject, as your friend." The Queen did something then that shocked everyone. She smiled. It was uncertain and awkward, like someone learning a new language, but it was genuine. "Yes," she said, "my friend." The ceremony ended with a celebration unlike anything Jake had ever seen. Music from 100 different cultures blended together. Food from countless worlds was shared freely. Beings who had once been parts of a single consciousness now danced and talked and laughed as